You stand in a hall lit by trembling candles. The stone walls breathe with draughts of smoke and whispers. You do not hear words clearly, only the hiss of rumor, winding like a serpent around your throat. It smells of wax, of damp wool, of something hidden beneath ceremony. A kingdom does not collapse in silence. It collapses in murmurs, in half-truths, traded like coins behind sleeves. And here, in the heart of England, you learn the cruelest paradox: a king surrounded by women, yet strangled by the absence of sons. Henry, majestic, brutal, desperate. His body is strong, but his legacy fragile. His reign is measured not in victories, but in the wombs of his wives, in the cries of children who lived and those who died before their names were inked. But the whispers, the whispers are louder than any prayer. They say he has sons, but not in marriage, bastards born of fleeting nights and silenced women. Some he acknowledges, like Henry FitzRoy, Duke of Richmond, who for a brief moment shimmered as a possible heir. Others denied, erased, left to grow like shadows beyond the palace gates. What is a throne worth if its bloodline leaks into the streets? You feel the weight of it now. A kingdom haunted not by enemies abroad, but by children who should have been princes. Whispers coil tighter. Questions of succession become knives at the king's throat, and in the flicker of the candlelight, you understand. This is not merely politics. It is obsession, swelling into madness. You feel the silence of a cradle that never rocks. Catherine of Aragon, loyal, dignified, bends beneath the weight of grief. Miscarriage after miscarriage, stillborn cries swallowed before the kingdom could ever hear them. A daughter survives, Mary. But to Henry, a girl is not a shield against collapse. He stares at her as if she is both blessing and betrayal, proof of fertility and proof of failure. For a king, lineage is not affection, it is survival. Without a son, his crown trembles, his dynasty cracks. The Wars of the Roses are not distant memory, they are scars still warm. He knows how quickly blood spills when succession falters. Every nobleman becomes a vulture, every distant cousin a contender. The absence of a boy is not absence, it is threat. And so, the court rots into a marketplace where wombs are weighed like coin, where a child's cry is worth more than loyalty or love. Women become vessels, blood becomes currency. Henry's gaze hardens, turning even joy into transaction. Yet beyond the gilded doors, illegitimate children stir. Not heirs, but not harmless. They are both shadows and weapons, ghosts that could undo him, or pawns he might wield. The year is 1519. The court whispers ignite when Elizabeth Blount, the king's mistress, gives birth to a son. Not a daughter, not a stillborn. A boy, alive, breathing, wailing with the promise Henry's crown so desperately craves. He is named Henry FitzRoy, son of the king. The title itself, a confession, a rare acknowledgement of flesh Henry could not deny. For a moment, the curse seems broken. The boy grows, pale-faced but noble. His presence a quiet rebuke to Catherine of Aragon's sorrow. Henry parades him, grants him lands, considers alliances that could have tethered kingdoms. At one point, marriage negotiations whisper of him uniting with Mary, Henry's own daughter, a grotesque knot of legitimacy and desperation. Anything to secure the Tudor line. But fate is cruel. In 1536, at just 17, FitzRoy dies. Some say consumption, others a wasting curse. His coffin carries more than a boy. It carries the dynasty's what if. Had he lived, England might have never seen the break with Rome, the execution of queens, the birth of Elizabeth I. His absence is a wound that shapes the world. Henry acknowledged one bastard, and even he was taken. Which leaves the darker question. What of the children never named, never claimed, never allowed to live in daylight? The whispers never died when Mary Boleyn entered the king's bed. She was sister to Anne, daughter to a family that rose like a flame in the Tudor court. From her womb came Catherine and Henry Carey, children born in the glow of scandal, their paternity forever poisoned by rumor. Were they the offspring of William Carey, Mary's husband? Or did their blood carry the secret pulse of the king himself? At court, tongues wagged mercilessly. Their features, some said the nose, the jaw, the spark of the eyes, looked too much like Henry's. Their fortunes seemed too blessed for coincidence. Catherine would one day serve Elizabeth I, her cousin, or perhaps her half-sister. Henry Carey rose high, receiving grants, positions, a life elevated far beyond what his supposed father could have secured alone. Royal favor clung to them like a shadow too deliberate to ignore, too dangerous to name. And yet imagine the cruelty of such an existence, to grow up watched, speculated upon, but never claimed. To live as half-seen children of a king who needed them hidden. Their very existence blurred the line between mistress and queen, loyalty and betrayal, family and scandal. The Carey children became symbols of Tudor politics, pawns in a game of bloodlines where legitimacy was both weapon and curse. Their faces were living reminders that a king's sins did not vanish, only multiplied. But if rumor shaped their lives, politics sharpened the stakes, for every whisper was also a threat. In Tudor England, bastardy was not just a stain, it was a weapon sharpened by rumor and law. A king's illegitimate child could never inherit the crown, yet their very existence haunted it. Each whispered name became a shadow claimant, each favor shone a spark of suspicion. A bastard could be used as a pawn by rebels, dangled as a banner of false legitimacy, or raised as a quiet threat to the fragile Tudor line. Henry knew this well. His court was a maze of scheming nobles, each hungry for advantage. To acknowledge a bastard was to risk fueling rebellion, to deny them was to leave unanswered whispers that weakened the throne. Bastards were poison in the blood of monarchy, too. Dangerous to crown, too dangerous to ignore. And so, most were hidden in half-truths and silence, left to live in the twilight between rumor and recognition. But silence itself breeds obsession, and the darker the denial, the louder the whispers grew. From this tension emerges the most haunting question of Henry's reign. How many heirs did he truly leave behind, and how many were deliberately erased? From history, the chamber reeks of sweat, candle smoke, and the iron tang of blood. You hear the cries first, raw animal cries muffled behind thick curtains, and then silence. In the Tudor court, childbirth was no miracle. It was a battlefield. For mistresses entangled with the king, every groan carried more than pain. It carried the weight of secrecy, the terror of being found out, and the knowledge that their bodies were bargaining chips in a game they could not control. These women, servants, courtiers, companions, risked everything. Their flesh became the stage for a king's desire, their wombs the vaults for potential heirs. A single child could elevate them beyond queens, or cast them into exile and disgrace. They were stripped of choice, reduced to vessels of rumor and danger. If a child resembled the king too closely, whispers would bloom like rot through the corridors. If the child did not survive, both mother and infant were buried in silence. The men played politics with bloodlines. The women bled alone, in the dark. No recognition, no crown, only the crushing knowledge that their secret would either destroy them or be erased. And yet, centuries later, bones and blood whisper louder than any court chronicler dared. The DNA of hidden children still lingers, in living veins, carrying stories their mothers were forced to swallow whole. Centuries ago, the truth was smothered in candle smoke and whispers. But today, science places its cold fingers on the bones of the past. Where rumor once ruled, DNA now offers its quiet testimony. Y chromosomes trace the unbroken line of fathers. Mitochondrial strands carry the breath of forgotten mothers. Each cell becomes a vault of memory, a confession carved into flesh long after the voices have died. Yet even this science is imperfect. Time erodes, graves are disturbed, and samples decay into silence. A single mutation, a single broken link, can turn certainty into shadow. The past does not surrender easily. It clings to its secrets like a wounded beast. Still, laboratories hum where once courtiers gossiped, and the question of Henry's hidden heirs is no longer only rumor. It is data, fragile and contested, but alive. The blood of the Tudors did not vanish. It seeps forward, searching for recognition. And with every test tube and microscope slide, the boundary between history and living body blurs. Catherine Carey, Henry Carey. Their names echo like faint footsteps down a corridor lined with locked doors. To some historians, they were nothing, more than the children of William Carey, their legal father. To others, their very faces bore the unmistakable stamp of Henry VIII. The jaw, the flame of hair, the proud tilt of the gaze. Yet the evidence is smoke. Records burn away. Gossip twists itself into daggers. Portraits lie as often as they confess. Scholars divide. Some dismiss the claim as idle scandal, while others insist the Careys were the king's living shadows, tolerated but never named. Truth here slips like blood through fingers, staining everything, proving nothing. And so the question deepens. Does proof matter more than belief? Is a legacy written in genes or in the power those rumors carried? For whether bastards or not, the Careys moved through court with unusual favor, rising like reeds in a river fed by unseen currents. But proof is a cruel thing. It promises clarity, yet often delivers only silence. Whispers stretch beyond England's borders, as if Henry's desire carved shadows across Europe itself. In his youth, before the crown weighed heavy, he traveled, flirted, hunted, and left behind trails of rumor like stains no water could wash away. Some tales spoke of a maid in Calais who bore a red-haired child. Others hinted at hidden offspring in the courts of France, where alliances were sealed not just by treaties, but by nights that dissolved into secrecy. Were these children real or phantoms conjured by envious tongues? Some claims are laughable, yet others persist with the stubbornness of scars. Chroniclers in whispers, nobles in scandal, servants in taverns, all told stories of a king whose virility exceeded his virtue. These shadows had no names etched into royal rolls, no titles bestowed, no arms granted. They existed in rumor alone, half born, half erased. But in rumor lies danger. For every bastard imagined abroad, a seed of doubt was planted at home. If heirs could appear anywhere, could any man truly say he owned the blood of kings? Or did Henry's lineage spill uncontrolled, like ink across parchment, staining borders far from his throne? The forbidden truth is this: even lies can wound dynasties. Imagine walking through gilded halls where every glance carries a question too dangerous to ask. Your hair too red, your jaw too sharp, your smile too familiar. And yet the king never speaks your name. You live in a half-light, celebrated in whispers, denied in truth. For those suspected to be Henry's children, the crown was not a gift, but a ghost. Court ladies giggled behind silk sleeves, men measured your rise with suspicion, and every kindness could turn to cruelty once tongues loosened. To be suspected was to be both precious and poisoned, watched, envied, and never embraced. The deepest wound was not poverty, but rejection. To walk in the shadow of the most powerful man in England, yet feel like a stain he scrubbed away. To hunger not for gold, but for acknowledgement. A single word, Father, that never came. Loneliness grew sharp in such silence, a blade honed by rumor. And the cut was not just theirs, but the dynasty's, bleeding through every denied child. The bust whispers were not only smoke, some left ink upon parchment. Letters from courtiers, brittle with time, speak of the king's base son, cloaked in euphemism but clear in intent. In 1525, when Henry FitzRoy was made Duke of Richmond, ambassadors marveled at such favor for a boy born of no lawful wife. Court accounts record sudden grants of land to young men whose bloodlines were never explained, their fortunes swelling without lineage to justify it. Catherine Carey, still a child, was given place in Queen Elizabeth's household, a gesture too grand for mere kinship, too carefully arranged to be coincidence. One Venetian ambassador wrote that Henry keeps many children, though which were his and which were not, none dared confirm aloud. The evidence drips, not flows, fragments of rumor hardened into record, yet always blurred at the edges. What is left to us are shadows bound in ink, proof enough to disturb, never enough to satisfy. And so the letters breathe like ghosts, not confirming, not denying, only whispering that the story was never as clean as the crown desired. 17 years. That was all the time fate allowed Henry FitzRoy. In July 1536, he withered with sudden sickness, most likely consumption, and the court fell into a silence thick as mourning cloth. The only son Henry had ever claimed carried off before manhood, before destiny could test him. Whispers rose in corridors. If FitzRoy had lived, might he have worn the crown? Would England have been spared the storms of succession, the blood of queens, the schism of faith? Or was his death the price demanded by a dynasty cursed with hunger for heirs? The boy who might have saved the Tudors became instead their phantom, haunting every failed birth that followed, every frantic marriage Henry forged. His absence was not merely a death. It was a wound in the throne itself, a shadow stretching forward into Elizabeth's reign, where legitimacy was always in question. FitzRoy's silence echoed longer than his breath. It became a silence that reshaped history, a void that crowned others in his place. And into that void, rumor poured, of other children, other heirs, hidden in plain sight. It is the cruelest irony. The child Henry once called illegitimate, the daughter of Anne Boleyn he nearly erased, would rise above them all. Elizabeth. Branded a bastard in law, struck from the line of succession, would wear the crown longer than any Tudor before her. In her reign, legitimacy became a mask, not a truth. The same nobles who once spat the word illegitimate now bent their knees, pretending blood was pure when power demanded it. Henry's obsession with sons had ended in nothing. The daughter he doubted built an empire of her own name. But Elizabeth never escaped the shadow of her birth. Every decision, every performance of majesty was also a defiance, proof that the stain her father marked her with could be turned into gold. The hypocrisy was complete, a dynasty destroyed by the hunger for heirs, redeemed by the very child denied. And so the circle closed. In Elizabeth's triumph lived the tragedy of her father's denial, the unspoken inheritance of secrecy, carried like a crown of thorns. In laboratories far from Tudor palaces, the story breathes again. Scientists peer into fragments of bone, strands of hair, ancient teeth sealed in time, searching for the Y chromosome that might whisper Henry's name. Computers hum where once rumor roared, portraits are scanned like suspects, and even the shadows of faces are compared for kinship long denied. Yet history resists the scalpel. Bones decay, records vanish, and the line between fact and myth blurs like blood diluted in water. DNA may yet speak, but it cannot alter coronations already performed, wars already fought, children already buried. The throne did not wait for science to decide. It crowned those who survived and left the rest to rumor. So we must ask, If proof were found, what would it mean? Would Catherine Carey cease to be a shadow and become a daughter? Would Henry FitzRoy's ghost reclaim the throne he never wore? Or would truth itself remain powerless, a ghost tapping on glass while history moves on? Science judges with numbers, history judges with silence. And in that silence, the ghost of Henry's hidden children lingers. Proof or no proof, their absence still shapes the story. Imagine a thread of blood stretching unbroken through 5 centuries, woven into families who dine by candlelight today, unaware of the whispers curled inside their veins. If Catherine Carey or her brother Henry were truly the children of Henry VIII, then the Tudor legacy did not end with Elizabeth's barren womb. It multiplied quietly, in cradles never claimed, in lines that branched far from the throne. Modern genealogists trace these roots like veins through marble. Peers of the realm, noble houses, even royals themselves may carry echoes of Henry's red hair, his temper, his hunger for power. The irony is almost unbearable. The king who shattered Christendom to secure a son may have seeded heirs enough to outlast empires, though none were ever crowned. The thought chills that those who walk in palaces today may unknowingly carry the shadow of a bastard past, their lineage haunted by denial, a ghostly reminder that legitimacy is not written in flesh but in politics. Blood survives where crowns do not, and perhaps, even now, Henry's true dynasty lives not on the throne, but in the silence of family trees, still whispering Tudor secrets through time. Why do we worship blood as though it were scripture? Why does a line of descent, pure or broken, carry such terrible weight? Kings raised it as law, priests cloaked it as divine, and yet it was nothing more than flesh, fragile, fallible, fleeting. Henry's hunt for legitimacy left bodies in graves, queens in ruins, children in silence. And still, 500 years later, we trace veins and names as if they could grant meaning. Perhaps it is not blood we seek, but certainty. A way to bind chaos with lineage, to imagine that power can be inherited like the color of an eye. But blood is indifferent. It does not care who is called son, who is cast as bastard, who wears the crown. It flows in tyrants and in beggars alike. And so the question remains, is legitimacy anything more than theater, a cruel story told to keep the powerful enthroned? The mirror turns toward you. What would you sacrifice to be recognized? What would you endure to belong? Picture Henry not as the colossus carved in portraits, but as a man pacing alone in chambers that reek of candle smoke and fear. He had crowns, armies, the obedience of millions. And yet his nights were haunted by silence, by the absence of sons who lived long enough to secure his name. He married 6 times, tore a nation from Rome, executed friends and wives alike, all to outrun the shadow of childless failure. Yet what did it give him? A dynasty built on denial, heirs buried before manhood, daughters he could not trust until it was too late. He left behind not a line of kings, but a trail of ghosts. FitzRoy, dead before 18. Elizabeth, branded a bastard before she ruled. Whispers of others, unacknowledged, unwanted. The mightiest king of his age, and still the loneliest father. This is Henry's true tragedy, not that he lusted for power, but that he could never hold what he most desired. Blood betrayed him, as it betrays us all in the end. They called them bastards, as if the word itself could erase flesh and silence memory. Yet the truth does not vanish, it festers. It seeps beneath doors, lingers in archives, hides in bone. Every denied child of Henry VIII is a warning carved into time. Power cannot rewrite blood, only obscure it, only obscure it. The Tudors built their empire on pageantry and pain, on marriages paraded like sacrifices, on heirs weighed like coin. But behind every coronation, behind every gilded procession, shadows walked. children unnamed, mothers discarded, bloodlines twisted into silence. And centuries later, their whispers remain louder than the trumpets of kings. To chase legitimacy is to chase a ghost. It consumes, it destroys, it leaves only ruin. And yet we still search, still hunger for names, as if the truth will set us free. But perhaps the real truth is darker, that power breeds denial, and denial breeds ghosts. So listen closely, for the bastards are still speaking. They remind us that cruelty cannot bury memory, that silence cannot kill blood. Their inheritance is not crowns, but warning, a nightmare that lingers long after the throne has turned to dust.